broomfield.org/live and through live streaming on Broomfield's website. Public participation is encouraged by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Please note, if you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you'll need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 participants in the queue have 1.5 minutes to speak. The City Council regular meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson. Here.
They're fixing the echo, y'all. Did Councilmember Henkel ever get let in? Because she's in. Okay, good. Sorry, y'all. Working it out. Are we, continuing with roll call? I think we were trying to stop the echo. Thank you for your patience. City Manager Hoffman.
Anderson.
Okay, so we're picking up on roll call. Okay, thanks.
Cohen. Hinkle.
Here.
Jazinski.
Here.
Leslie.
Here.
Lim.
Here.
Lindstedt.
Here.
Marsh Holston.
Here.
Shaw.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Okay, is that all? Then we have a quorum. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. We will plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We'll begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. This evening, under petitions and communications, staff will present information regarding 2022 brouhaha and invite everyone to attend. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Sorry about that background there. Everyone continues to readjust back into this virtual environment. Director Clay Shuck is joining us along with Kay Gazaway to let us know about the fun upcoming brouhaha. Mr. Shuck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Really excited about the brouhaha this weekend, and I want to turn over to Kay Gazaway to give you the specifics of the event. Kay?
Kay, you were muted.
How's that? Is that better?
Better.
All right.
Sorry about the false start. Anyway, I am here and very happy to be inviting you all to this year's Brouhaha. It's our 6th annual event, which will be held on Saturday at the Arista Park. The event is from 12 to 5. We start out the morning with a free yoga class on the lawn at 10:30, hosted by our recreation department. And then after the class, we close the street off and we open the gates at noon. And this event is free and open to everyone and all ages. You can even bring your dog on a leash to the event. We do check IDs at the gate, and then we'll give everyone a wristband according to age appropriate. This event has 2 live bands this year. There is a young up and coming group that starts the event called Ren, Aaron, and the band. And then the afternoon ends with a high energy dance band called Groove in Motion. And of course, Brouhaha is all about the lawn games. So we'll have giant Jenga and checkers and Connect 4 and plenty of cornhole. And the area breweries have been making up their new recipes. So I think you'll have some fun things to taste there. And we've also been looking for some new food vendors for this event. So we're going to have some Thai this year and some egg rolls, some gourmet brats and Texas barbecue and some fancy tacos. And that's just a little sampling of what we'll be serving. Brouhaha started out as a zero waste event, and we're really proud to be continuing that tradition again this year. We have our stations will be staffed by our employees and some trained volunteers. Then they'll be coaching residents on how to properly dispose of their compostable cups and serviceware. So that's an important piece of Brouhaha. And then of course there's the vendor fair, which has products and services and artwork that's of interest to young professionals and fits a modern lifestyle. And there's going to be several city departments at the event this year. It's a great community outreach opportunity to a different group of residents than some of our other festivals attract. So we're happy to have them. And it's going to be a sunny, hot day on Saturday. And I just hope that you will all come down to Brouhaha at Arista and enjoy the day. We're looking forward to hosting our first event of the summer festival season. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Kay. We'll now go to public comments on this item, and checking the online site. I don't see any. So let's go to council. Any council members have any comments or questions on this item? Raise your hand. Well, it looks like you covered it all. I would like to add that Broomfield Fish will be conducting a food drive at Brouhaha. So please stop by their booth if you have any non-perishable food donations. And we hope everyone will get out and enjoy this event. Everybody who's anybody goes. So you don't want to miss out. Thank you so much, Kay and Clay.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, y'all. We'll move to general public comment next. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters other than the items listed elsewhere on the agenda. As mentioned earlier, the public may comment on the phone only this evening. To be placed in the queue for comment, please call 855-695-3744 and press *3 to be placed in the queue. Public comments will be limited to the time limits outlined earlier. Let me flip over there. I actually don't see anybody in the general public comment. So we'll move right along. Council's community and event updates are next. Does any member of the council have an update this evening? All right, well, we're going to jam through this. Council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. The clerk will read all of the consent agenda items by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Council will then be asked to approve the consent agenda in 3 separate motions, as item 7B needs approval by the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, and item 7E is a request for an executive session and requires an individual motion. Following the clerk's reading of consent agenda items 7A through 7D, we will ask for public comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 7A through 7D by title?
7A, approval of minutes from May 24th, 2022, regular meeting. 7B, approval of borough minutes from November 9th, 2021, regular meeting, and February 8th, 2022, regular meeting. 7C, resolution number 2022-83, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Cisco Denver Incorporated for food products and services for Broomfield Senior Nutrition Program. 7D, resolution number 2022-78, approving a reimbursement agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Mid-Cities Metropolitan District Number 1 for regional trail improvements.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comments. And again, I don't see any online. So questions and comments from council are next. Does any member of council have any questions or comments on these items? Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So more of a comment on 7D. I'd be remiss without acknowledging our Open Space and Trails staff for their tremendous work on the Open Space Day and their successful launch of the 100 days here in Broomfield of trails. With one of the comments that community members continue to talk about and questions that came up was, how can we get these trails to connect with one another outside of Broomfield? Because that seems like the plan. And this, I noticed that in this plan, that this is where we start to, we've been already doing it, but this goes along, one step further in connecting our trails within Broomfield to outside trails. And that's a big issue for people that are using these within our neighboring communities. So just wanted to put that out there, give a shout out to our Open Space and Trails staff for their tremendous work, not only on Open Space Days, but continued work in establishing connectivity within our jurisdiction and our region.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see any hands, so we'll now proceed with the first motion. Is there a motion by council that the recommendations contained in the staff reports for agenda items 7A through 7D, C, and D be approved? Councilmember Lindstedt.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All council members are joining us virtually. Therefore, we will use a roll call vote this evening. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen, Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Marsh-Holshin,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. The second part of the consent agenda this evening is the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of item 7B. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. Again.
Anderson,
Here.
Cohen, Hinkle, Jezierski,
Here.
Leslie,
Here.
Lim,
Here.
Lindstedt,
Here.
Marsh-Holshin,
Here.
Mitchell, Nielsen, Schaaf,
Here.
Ward,
Here.
Thank you. A quorum is present. Is there a motion from the authority that the recommendations contained in the staff report for agenda item 7B be approved? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
And a second, Councilmember Lindstedt.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Don't see any hands. Will the clerk please call the roll for the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority?
Cohen, Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindsted,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin,
Yes.
Oh, is that it?
Mitchell,
No.
Ward,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Then that passes unanimously too. Next is
Mayor,
council.
I get called, Anderson is a yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Authority Member Anderson. So it's still unanimous. That's awesome. Next is council's consideration of consent agenda item 7E, a request for an executive session. Will the city and county attorney please read the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The motion is that an executive session be held on June 28th, 2022, prior to council's regular meeting for the purpose of providing legal advice and providing instruction to negotiators related to Creststone's Coslet East Pad COGCC application and related documents as permitted by CRS Section 24-6-402 4B and E.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you, Councilmember Lindstedt.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Is there a second, Councilmember Henkel? Thank you. Do you need, is there any discussion? Henkel, or do you just have your hand up still? Okay, cool. And then as a reminder, requests for executive session require an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum present. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindsted,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen.
He's excused. All right, thank you. That passes unanimously too. There is no business before the Board of Social Services or the Board of Health this evening. Item 11A will be reviewed concurrently with 15A. The first item under council business this evening is a public hearing and council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2022-80 regarding an amendment to the Depot Hill Planned Unit Development Plan and a site development plan. This item will be concurrently reviewed by the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, as item 15A is council's consideration of the urban renewal site plan for the same project. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority was called to order earlier this evening. I'll now declare the public hearing open. We'll follow the city's standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we'll have the applicant's presentation. Then we'll ask for public comments and final comments from the applicant. And finally, questions from City Council. Council and Borough Board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. Anna Bertonzetti, Co-Director of Community Development, will introduce this item to us. Ms. Bertonzetti.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and Urban Renewal Authority members. The application this evening, if we could have the next slide, please. It's an application submitted by FS Depot Hill LLC. They have submitted this application for an amendment to the planned unit development, the PUD plan, as well as a site development plan, urban renewal site plan. The proposed buildings for this site are located at the northwest corner of Depot Hill and 10th Avenue. The buildings will house 33 individual units for a variety of uses. The lot is approximately 2.71 acres in size And the property currently does have a PUD plan. It is within the Depot Hill PUD plan. The PUD currently allows office and retail uses within this area. If we could have the next slide, please. The property is designated as commercial on Broomfield's comprehensive plan land use map. If we can have the next slide. Thanks. This proposed project is consistent with that commercial land use designation. Next slide, please. The applicant is requesting a PUD plan text amendment. The amendment will allow some additional uses beyond just the office and retail that's currently allowed. The uses are intended to provide opportunities for small businesses to utilize the 33 intended tenant spaces for uses such as art studios, tasting rooms, meeting spaces, potentially for religious uses, plumbing or carpentry shops, small instructional spaces for things like yoga or martial arts, fitness clubs, and specialized training, and appliance repair or food catering. A full list of the uses is included in the staff memorandum, as well as detailed in the PUD text amendment. The uses generally align with the uses allowed in limited business districts and limited industrial districts. The text amendment also lists uses that would be specifically prohibited, such as mini storage, outdoor storage of inoperable vehicles, adult entertainment, long-term parking, and any uses which would include emissions or noxious fumes that are prohibited by federal, state, or local government. Next slide, please. This color diagram depicts the proposed development with respect to the parking, the access and drive aisles, as well as the building orientation and parking. It also shows landscaping, pedestrian access, and the individual units themselves. There's a total of 3 buildings, as I mentioned, and the landscaping is primarily along the street frontages to enhance the drives and along 10th Avenue. It meets the landscape requirements for the PUD. The exterior lighting, which is mounted on the building, adheres to the full cutoff guidelines, as these are downward cast lights, and they include shields to help cut off light spillage onto adjacent properties. The buildings will be approximately 23 feet in height, which will offer the tenants the opportunity to have mezzanines within some of the units. Each unit will have its own restroom, with 26 of the 33 tenant spaces, also including garage doors in addition to a primary pedestrian entrance. The parking lot provides 95 parking spaces. There's ADA accessible spaces dispersed throughout the development, as well as on-site bicycle parking, and 25 EV capable parking spaces, as well as 6 EV ready parking spaces. The parking variance is requested because of the variety of uses. Unlike typical commercial or industrial areas, it's anticipated that some of these tenant spaces will be attractive to uses such as a hobbyist or other low traffic users that may not utilize parking spaces in the same way as a typical retail tenant space. For example, personal training or tasting rooms may have hours that are very atypical from neighboring professional offices or medical users. A parking study was completed for this reason for this project and was utilized as the basis for the proposed parking to ensure that we were providing a balance between providing adequate but not too much parking for this type of a unique development. An overall ratio is proposed at 1 space for every 297 square feet, which is very similar to office requirements in the municipal code, which is 1 space per 300 square feet. Next slide, please. There is signage proposed with a monument entry sign at the southeast corner of Depot Hill Road and 10th Avenue. It's subject to the Depot Hill PUD requirements and the Broomfield Municipal Code. The elevation drawings depict the sign to be approximately 63 square feet in size, which is well below the maximum size of 300 square feet allowed by the code. Next slide, please. This rendering depicts the architecture of the flex buildings, and they're designed to look like office building suites. The architecture, colors, and materials were reviewed and found to meet the design requirements of the US 36 West Corridor urban renewal area, and additional architectural elements such as awnings and balconies were added to provide additional visual interest along 10th Avenue. Next slide, please. City Council reviewed a concept plan for these buildings in October of 2021. At that time, There were comments indicating that it would be important to prohibit outdoor storage and self-storage. There was also discussion regarding the importance of improving the existing sidewalks and ensuring the exterior lighting meets dark sky practices, and that the site allow for adequate parking. These comments have been addressed through the PUD plan text amendment with the proposed lighting and with the widening of the sidewalk along Depot Hill from its current 4 feet to a total of 8 feet in width with this proposal. Parking, as I mentioned, was also further studied, and that parking study has been reviewed by Broomfield's traffic engineer. The Land Use Review Commission heard this request on April 11th of 2022 and voted 6-0 to recommend approval with no conditions. The applicant had hosted a neighborhood meeting as required in October of last year. The consultants reviewed the proposal with attendees and staff at that time. Attendees were nearby residents and some tenants of nearby spaces. There were questions asked regarding the variety of uses. There were some concerns voiced about the proposed industrial type uses, especially with regards to automotive repair, and hence the prohibiting of the inoperable vehicles as a condition within the PUD text amendment. And the mix of use, and there were also concerns regarding the mix of uses to ensure adequate parking. Next, sorry, I think this is the last, but noticing was required and has been provided for this public notice or for this public hearing. And as referenced in the staff report, staff did identify one key issue with this proposal, and that's with the parking variance. The parking for this site, as I mentioned, is unique because there is quite a mix of tenants that could occupy these 33 spaces. And for that reason, a parking study was utilized as the basis for the parking provided. The study concluded that a total of 121 parking spaces, including the parking lot as well as 26 in-unit spaces, will be adequate to accommodate vehicles for this proposed use. This concludes staff's presentation on this item, and the applicant is here this evening for a brief presentation as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bertonzetti. Next is the applicant presentation, and just as we ask staff to keep their presentations brief, I ask the applicant to be concise in their presentation. Will the applicant's representative please identify themselves for the record before beginning your presentation this evening?
My name is Patricia Wasik, and hopefully I'm not still muted.
We can hear you.
I'm part of the development team for FS Depot Hill. And along with me tonight, I have Elise Applegate, who's with Norris Design, and she'll give you more detail in a minute. Jerry Davidson, who's with our civil engineer group, and Shane Robertson, our architect. And last not least, Chad Hurd is our landscape architect. So we have all of us to answer questions that you may have. But hopefully we will answer all of your questions in our next presentation. But we are excited about this location. It's when we were considering the various locations in the metro area, we looked at all of the usual things: demographics, household income, diversity. We picked this site because of its demographics that stand out to us, with traffic counts and just off of Highway 36. So we're really excited about the project, have had a lot of interest already from users, and we're excited about the next steps. So with that, I will introduce you to Elise Applegate to go through the specifics of our project.
Thank you. As Pat said, my name is Elise Applegate and I work with Norris Design. The address is 1101 Bannock Street, Denver, 80204. Thank you to Anna and City Council and staff for your time this evening, and we'll get to the next slide, please. I don't know if it froze for the rest of you all. Perfect. So on this site plan, you see the 33 units that Anna spoke about earlier that are all intended to increase the availability of flexible office and retail space for business owners looking for smaller spaces than what's typically available on the market. The units are spread across the 3 different buildings and are sized between 850 and 2,500 square feet, the average size being about 1,000 square feet. You know, as Anna mentioned, a handful of the units, 26 of them will have garage doors and will, you know, provide an option for parking. That parking would be EV capable given the electrical outfitting within the units. The site plan also provides a minimum of 8-foot wide attached sidewalks throughout the site. We're actually adding 4 feet onto the back of existing sidewalks along Depot Hill Road, really improving the pedestrian and bicycle options in this area. In terms of site layout, the site was strategically designed to work around some existing detention and avoid any icing issues. So that's why buildings A and C are perpendicular to 10th Avenue, but you'll see that we really made an effort to still greet the street with our architecture there. And the site is lined with landscaping that's all low maintenance and low water need, but really does do well to anchor the site. Next slide, please. So this is the view from 10th Avenue looking northwest. And the buildings designed here are intended to be inviting to the surrounding community with a lot of detailing and design throughout. Here you can see we've provided some variety in building massing, balcony space, and doors and awnings all facing 10th Avenue to really greet the street there. Next slide, please. This view is also from 10th Avenue, but a little further west, and it's looking north. And here you can see there's a contrasting color scheme to provide a really modern design. But the architect was also really intentional with building form and tied a lot of details together with patterning to provide a varied elevation and not just sort of a monolithic warehouse look, which is not at all what the site is intended to be or to look like. You'll also notice that there's changes in paving materials from the parking area to the sort of sidewalk area in front of buildings. All of that will be level to allow ADA access into the units and vehicular access to those garage doors. But we were really intentional about creating that visual distinction between, you know, pedestrian space and vehicle space. Next slide, please. And this final view is from Depot Hill Road looking to the southeast. And our architecture team worked really closely with Broomfield Urban Design to add visual interest along all of our road-facing elevations, including, you know, addition of masonry, window canopies, and mezzanine level windows. Next slide, please. You know, this slide touches on the potential users that the MyFlexSpace units can accommodate. There's, you know, a full range. We're anticipating, you know, workspace and customer interaction space for small businesses, flexible office space for small companies that might need to secure their machinery or equipment, space for personal trainers, a home away from home for families that need additional space for work or fun, and then a lot of sort of arts or crafts like carpentry shops, art and photography studios. And as Anna mentioned, personal mini storage is not an intended or expected use given the abundance of those options at lower costs, and it's also strictly prohibited by the PUD text amendment. Next slide, please. And this just touches on the parking demand study that was already discussed. We're providing more parking than the demand study estimated, but trying not to go too far over the top and considering all of those garage spaces, essentially bonus spaces, for a total of 121 potential spaces, but a guaranteed 95 surface parking spaces outside. Next slide. You know, with this, we'll wrap up our presentation, but we did want to note that this project can directly achieve several goals of the Broomfield Comprehensive Plan. And in particular, we believe it meets the goal to encourage and support commercial development that contributes to a diverse community image and to a vibrant character that provides increased choices and services. Thank you, and we welcome any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Next, we'll go to public comments, and I did notice that we have someone online to comment. So we'll go to you, Louise, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I first want to thank City Council and the City of Broomfield. We back to Thanksburg Park, our home does, and the landscape that they've done in Thanksburg Park is just absolutely beautiful. They've added a couple trees. It's quite nice, and we enjoy it every day. So I wanted to go on record thanking for the effort put in that front. Additionally, my concern and the reason for my dialing in today is I was part of the original public comment. I asked the architect for information about this site, and they actually were very responsive and provided information so I could see an example of one of their buildings that they had done in another location. I'm calling tonight because I find that some of the landscape was soft. It looked a little rough, and I'm asking for council to consider a way, if at all, to amend and enhance the landscape that's going to be put in this area. I'm very happy to see that something's going to be developed in this eyesore that's been in our neighborhood for years. So I would like to ask for consideration for that. Secondly, the parking study that was done, I couldn't follow it. I don't know if it was transparent, and I just asked that council be mindful of the number of cars that are coming into that area, and if they've really reviewed it and it's absolutely true and correct, and that's the best we can do, then I trust people in my council. But I would like for someone to take note of that. We have a huge concern in this neighborhood that it will become just a used junk car area for certain businesses or industries that might use it for car repair or auto repair, and we don't want it to become a parking lot. So that's really the impetus to my call and to ask for that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We did have another person in the queue, but they dropped off, so I don't know. Jake, do you know if...
Mayor,
yes.
We have 2 people that are in the lobby that would also like to comment.
How's that work?
We have it set up.
Okay.
In the lobby.
I trust you. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Stacy Showalter, and I spoke up back in October when this was first being developed. And it sounds like that you took into consideration like the lighting. My house directly faces this new development. And I was worried about the height of it because I do have a beautiful view of Rocky Mountain Airport and Pikes Peak, and I don't want to lose that. I'm also a night owl, which the lighting
At night.
I was very the lighting situation I had a problem with, but then I noticed that these garage doors that are attached to this, I'm assuming that they can be open during business hours or whatever time. I am also concerned about the noise. I am retired. I'm home 24/7. I'm not opposed to calling the Broomfield Police for noise levels, but I don't like noise. I like my quiet. And then you also mentioned a tasting room. You do realize that there's a preschool within walking distance of this development. So there's children out playing during the day. Just to let you know that it is within walking distance. I don't know how far, but that could make a difference on what is placed in this development.
Is that all?
That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Is this Ms. Showalter? Stacy Showalter?
Stacy Showalter, yes.
We appreciate you coming in to comment.
Thank you, Mayor.
And your patience with our technical issues.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't get the memo that it was on Zoom, so forgive me.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad we could accommodate you. And who would like to?
More public comment in the lobby.
Let's go.
Okay, my name is Adrian Terenzoni. I live on Zanesburg Park. I'd like to say thank you for putting the new trees in. I'm the lady that's been cleaning the park for 15 years. I pick up the trash every time I walk the dogs. And And the park is very nice, and it's very much used. There's always some kind of a softball game or practice going on right there at where you want to develop this unit, this multi-purpose unit. And there's a lot of kids in the playground. There's kids, playing volleyball. It's just a really well-used park. So now I think to myself, okay, when you're trying to talk about who's going to fill these spaces, if you have a gym, you are going to have some parking for people. I mean, right now you've got one spot per office there. You get a beauty shop in there, they're going to need 8 or 9 spots if they have even 4 gals working there. You have a barber shop in there, same deal. The tasting bar, I don't really understand how you think that's going to work, but whatever. Anything that has to do with food and all, I mean, 1 parking spot. And then like I said earlier, the gym, of course, your video your video slides to us showed a garage with cars working in there. My garage that I go to, he's always got 6 cars out and in, getting ready to be picked up, getting ready to be worked on. We talked about parking back in October, and I see nothing different has happened with that. And you're still selling it as we are sure we have enough parking spaces for the people that are going to rent these units. Not that you have any idea who's going to rent the units, but you have parking for them. So then you just kind of scratch your head and go, okay, where are they going to park? So one other thing too is right in that area, there's a retaining wall that holds, that separates Zane Spur Park from the area where you guys are building, and nobody maintains above that retaining wall. So that's always, I don't know, 3 foot, 2, 3 foot high weeds. It's like none of the people that work on the other side do anything about it. And I don't know if you're going to do anything about it. So I think that's about it for me. I wanted it to be better looking than it is. I sure hope you mean that about the landscaping, because that will save it, because it really looks like a warehouse to me. And then the parking, who are you going to get in there and that can make money, and they're going to need people to park.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Terenzoni, for joining us and giving your feedback. We appreciate it. We also have a caller online that would like to comment. So we'll go back to the CRL site and give the floor to Jerry. Jerry, you have 3 minutes.
I'll take less than that. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I've just got some random comments to the dog lady who does the cleaning of the park. Right on. I'm in Depot Hill at 1010, right at the top of the horseshoe. And we look at that as we've been waiting for it to be developed for years, but we feel this is not the right kind of a development. This is not a good gateway for Locamora. The parking is an issue. Preschool traffic is a concern to us. We're very concerned that this is not an industrial area, but this would be a nice spot for an office complex with a more simple approach. But again, I applaud the designers for what they've done. I just feel it's in an appropriate place. We consider the Zang Spur Trail. We've watched that get developed, and that alone takes a lot of parking. Our parking spaces are typically taken anytime after 5 by people at the park, and that's fine because that's when a lot of our tenants go home. But we're a little bit concerned with any development before that. And also, I've got a question that I'm sure you've addressed, and that's the Prairie Dogs that live there. So that's my sum and substance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. We have another caller in the queue. Ray, you have 3 minutes.
All right, I'll be like the last person. I'll probably take less than 3. Hey, this is Ray Cherevich. I live in Locamora, so I'm right in that area. And I think this is a great idea, not for this location, though. This is like the gateway to our neighborhood, and it's kind of going to be like this industrial and hopefully not trashy after a while development. The builders, I spoke with them probably in October, and they were really great. They provided me the addresses of the two other locations where they have such flex space, and they were more in industrial areas, kind of like our Burbank Avenue. And I think it would be appropriate there, but kind of like the gentleman before me, it's just great idea, but I hate to say it, not in my backyard type of concept. It just seems like a bad entryway to our Lacamora neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I don't see any other comments in the queue. Somebody let me know if that changes. So does the applicant have any final comments based on the resident feedback? Ms. Wasik?
Yeah, I think a couple of things regarding parking. Our project in total is just over $10 million. We look at all our developments as they'll be successful. And it's because we put in a lot of research. We don't look at this, and I think I've mentioned this before in front of the council members, that in some of the things that I've done in the past with medical office buildings, parking is the number one problem. It's the number one issue in medical office buildings. So it's something I pay attention to from the very start. And we've looked at a lot of different options in how to put this piece of land together and be successful. So we have done our homework on that. We've looked at not just the sites that mirror what we're doing around the metro area, but in other areas and other states. So we feel confident about what we're putting together and what we're suggesting on the parking. Prairie Dogs, I'm going to let Elise talk more about that. We have done a count on that. So there's 16 Prairie Dogs on that site. And I'll let Elise go into what we have decided what we'll do going forward on that with those.
Thanks, Pat. So the development and design team has been working closely with Broomfield Parks and Open Space, and they've gotten us in touch with Colorado State Wildlife. We're in the process of completing a permit to move the Prairie Dogs on site to an existing open space, assuming there is room for them there. If not, we'll follow the Broomfield standards for alternative removal. But we are, taking all the means we can to move them to an open space where they could be relocated to.
Is that all you wanted to address, Ms. Wasik? There is the tasting room, child preschool.
Right. Okay. The tasting room is one concept that one of our competitors has done, and those tasting rooms, what they really are is they're a way to distribute wines. And so what they do is on a Saturday afternoon, late afternoon, they'll do a tasting. It is not something that would happen during times when kids are there. We will have strict owner rules and regulations that we will enforce, not only when we sell the units, but when we manage the units. We are not going to jeopardize what's already there. We're really wanting to look at this project as an enhancement, and be able to have the services nearby that are there that could be taken advantage of for the users in our property.
All right. Great. And I just had a couple more things to add on to that. There was a comment about landscaping, and we would have loved to add more landscaping to the site, but the entire perimeter of the site includes a utility easement that there isn't an option to plant trees in that space right next to the sidewalk. And then there's a certain area within, 5 or 6 feet of the foundation where you can't plant for issues related to foundation stability. So we did put as much landscaping on site as we could, but we understand that comment. And then with regard to a comment about building height, the maximum building height here is 23 feet. And looking at some other projects I've done in Broomfield recently, single family homes are often coming in at 31 feet for 2 stories. So we certainly understand wanting to preserve views, and we think we're doing our part there by keeping this as a relatively low height. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Applegate. All right, then questions from City Council and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from Council and Borough? Councilmember Shao?
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the first questions that I had came out of the concept review on this, which was the rooftop HVAC, equipment, and there was the need that if this was included, that there would need to be shielding for those units. I'm curious, is there plans to have rooftop HVAC units on these units?
There are plans for that, and within our architectural elevations, we've created options to show how there would be parapets to screen those from the street.
Okay, and with those HVAC units, would that still come under that 1.5 stories and that max height that you had just mentioned?
Yes, I believe so.
Can we get a little bit more clarification, seeing how this is one of those issues that we had residents calling about tonight?
Absolutely. Shane, can I have you answer that question? He's from our architecture team.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, Shane Robertson with Farnsworth Group. Yeah, so we took lots of consideration into the HVAC units. In particular, building 1 that is in the middle that is kind of double loaded. That's the only building that will actually have HVAC units on the roof. And those are not commercial size HVAC units. Those are smaller residential units based on sizing of each unit space and the square footage. And the way that we've designed it for that building in particular is those will be screened with screen walls. The other 2 buildings, those HVAC units are actually going to be placed on the ground behind the building, and we've incorporated landscaping to screen those. And as far as the overall height, those units are, I think, only 33 inches high. And we did some view studies actually from the parking lot from Depot Hill Road and 10th to make sure that those are screened properly and will be hardly in pedestrian view.
Okay, just to confirm, so the HVAC units will be on the roof for building 1, and even with those rooftop units, it will still be under that 33 feet.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer. So thanks for clarifying the landscaping question and about kind of what landscape is going to be allowed, not necessarily allowed, but practical, right? Because of the easements that are through there, the utility easements, as well as the retaining walls and the foundation kind of integrity that needs to continue. So there was a comment, and this may be for staff, there was a comment with regard to weeds that were around the retaining wall. Is that going to be on this site, and will that be taken care of, or is this a separate issue outside of this site?
Thank you, Councilmember Schaaf. I am not familiar with the exact location, but staff will certainly look into it to make sure that if that is not a part of this project that will be taken care of, that we follow up.
Okay, great. I appreciate staff noting that and taking care of that and looking into it further. The last question I had was, which was regarding parking. Thank you for all of your work on this. It seems like this is going to be adequate parking for the business itself. We did hear from one of our public comment tonight talking about the concerns about parking in neighboring businesses. And I was curious about, kind of just looking at the future of this. Will there be kind of an outreach to neighboring businesses as this development starts to go up, actually starts to be utilized, and kind of some type of information so that those neighboring businesses know who to contact? It may not be that specific user. It could be the general building owner. So just kind of providing that information on who they can contact and wanting some assurance that those neighboring businesses will know who to contact when the time comes.
Is that it, Councilmember Schaaf?
Yeah, I don't know if that was a question, but I'm just
I kind
hoping
of thought it was, but that's why I paused.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just hoping for some clarification that yes, they will know who to contact and that there will be some type of business-to-business outreach.
Yeah, I will mention to you, we have connected with, I think, almost all of the callers tonight, one-on-one. So we do take those comments seriously. We have followed up with that. We have just been starting our marketing, our whole marketing plan for this, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we will be doing a groundbreaking and inviting all our neighbors and that kind of thing, so that we can start to understand what they're looking for, making sure we're getting the right uses in that area so that it is complementary. That's our goal.
Great. Thank you for those. That's all the questions I have, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Lim?
Yes, I have questions regarding uses and parking, which are somewhat interrelated. So the PUD amendment specifies a certain percentage of like 37.5% warehouse, 37.5% retail, 25% hobby. And then those percentages are used then to develop the number of parking spaces that will be used in their estimation. So first of all, I guess, what do the percentages mean in this PUD amendment? I mean, how will the occupants, be kept to these percentages? Will the developer verify that they're somewhat in the ballpark? The uses are somewhat within the ballpark of those percentages in the PUD amendment? Let's start there, maybe.
Elise, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the parking demand study was based on similar projects, looking at what the typical tenant or owner mix is within these types of flexible use spaces. So that's where the 37.5% warehouse uses came in. And that really encompasses a wide variety of things, as does hobbyist and retail to office uses. And so it's really building off of precedents that we've seen with other projects. And then, using that to narrow into the different kinds of land uses that the Broomfield code accounts for and that international traffic standards account for when creating parking minimums. So essentially, we're gathering a lot of information and trying to funnel it into specific categories. But with that in mind, as Patricia mentioned earlier, this project and others like it are curated over time to make sure that you have a right combination of users to make sure that they complement each other, that you don't have conflicting users or issues with parking or things like that. Because in the long haul, that really doesn't bode well for the success of the development. Pat, did you have anything to add with regard to how owners are selected and brought into the development?
Really, we again did our homework studying other similar projects, and with almost very similar demographics. So we've actually kind of slated out which units would have various upgrades and which won't, and which will just be for sort of hobbyists storing their fancy car. So we've really looked at our competition and looked at what percentages that they view their users in what their type users are. And so that's kind of how we've put this together and how we thought through that parking. But we did hire a consultant for that. And they also did research outside of the metro area to come up with those statistics.
Okay, so those statistics, the percentages of uses, were not meant to restrict your occupants. They were just meant as a basis for the parking calculations. Is that correct?
It was based on what other projects in the metro area that we've looked at their use and what they're were considered to be.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. There's a statement, I understand in the PUD text, there is a prohibition against mini storage, outdoor storage, outdoor storage. But there's a statement on page 8 in the memo. Maybe this is a staff question. While this proposal prohibits the use of buildings for a self-storage facility, the buildings may be used for personal storage or commercial storage of machinery or materials. So what's the difference between self-storage and personal storage? Because I mean, that was a clear statement in the concept review that nobody wanted this to be self-storage.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim, for the question. I think it's hard for us to describe. This is really a unique use, but I think what we were trying to convey with that language was this is not intended, it's not allowed to be a mini storage facility, but some of the users, a carpentry shop, an office, a hobbyist may end up using portions of their units for storage of their goods, of their personal materials, but it's not a mini storage facility. It's not a commercial storage where someone is using it like the facilities that we have throughout the town. But it's different, but it's, like I said, it's even hard to describe it here, but that was what we were trying to convey.
Okay, thank you. There were questions during the concept review from several council members if the developer would be allowing or controlling in any way if the owners were able to live in the units. Can you address that?
So we have addressed that in the condo documents. That's a restriction that we'll have, and that'll be enforced. The buildings, don't have that kind of rating for an occupancy type. So we will enforce that.
And then to the parking. So to address the residents' concerns about the parking, what recourse would there be if for some, I understand that you did the third-party study which shows that the parkings will be adequate based on the uses that are probable. If it's found that there's overflow parking into the neighborhood streets or businesses, what would be the procedure for handling that? Would the developer consider limiting the number of parking spaces that each owner could have, or just, I'm throwing out a possibility here, or, as a recourse in case of worst case?
We're setting up the parking as shared areas. So it will be a common area that everyone will share in. Of course, they'll own the parking space in their space, within the building, right? But other than that, we're not going to allow cars or people just to park there. And I don't know how we would enforce that, but we have enforced that, in our other properties that we manage, and we would do the same thing. We would not allow just the overflow to be, in the street and that kind of thing. There might even be some exceptions where they have to get approval for events like a wine tasting. They would have to have approvals to do that, and the time has to make sense for everybody within the development and as well as the community around.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I just have two questions, and I was also going back to my notes from the view. And I had a note about the association, which I think you maybe just called the condo documents, but I just hear a little bit more about how that works. And can you, in that document, I guess it's kind of all one question, because can you, through that document, prohibit the potential of junk cars, the hours of operation, and then the noise? I had a note that it was following the Broomfield Municipal Code, but that's 40 dBA from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So in that association document, would that also somehow prohibit these businesses from being open, a car mechanic with his garage door open until 10 p.m.? If you could address that, that'd be very helpful.
So yeah, typically those are exactly the kinds of restrictions you'll see in a condo document. It's not any different from some of the condominiums that you have worked through in the city, where they'll have to have condo association rules and regs, and each owner will have a vote. And so they participate in quarterly meetings. There will be a reserve that will capital expenditures that will also be a responsibility of that management company to collect, so that when there are potholes that develop, and they will be, there's reserves set aside for that, so that you don't have a situation where it becomes an eyesore. So did I answer that question?
Yeah, that's actually very helpful. Okay, and I guess the last piece to that is, you said owner would have a vote, and I'm sure that they're going to have potentially conflicting businesses, and so that makes sense. But is there an opportunity there for the public to make comment if the noise became excessive? Because they would want to go to the city and say, hey, it's really noisy over there, but is there the opportunity in that condo association for the public to weigh in if it's something with a neighbor in the neighborhood?
I haven't experienced that, but I would say absolutely. If it is a problem in that neighborhood, we absolutely would have the ability to have them included in the meeting and discuss the reasons why, and how that impacts our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. So
thank you. That is all my questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any other council members with questions? Council members, well, that's second round, right? Anybody on the first round want to ask any questions? I'm not seeing any. So we'll go to you, Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had one additional question that Councilmember Lim reminded me of. During the concept review, we talked about the mix of owner-occupied spaces as well as tenant spaces that would be rented out and possibly changed over. Can you give us the kind of idea of where you're going with in terms of how many of these, I believe it's 33 units, will be owner-occupied versus the rental tenant situation?
Again, going back to our homework and our competing projects in the metro area, we find that probably less than 5% are not owner occupied. So and typically what will happen is the owner will buy an additional unit knowing that he's going to expand his business, and in the meantime we'll lease it out to a tenant. So that's kind of how that's worked, but it's very small percentage. So
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that answer.
Thank you. Any other questions from council or borough? All right. There being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. First is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2022-80. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2022-80 by title?
11A, public hearing, resolution number 2022-80, approving the Depot Hill Lot 1 Planned Unit Development Plan Amendment and Site Development Plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ward.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel. You're on mute.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Councilmember Lim.
Yes, this does seem like a good use of the property for the sake of bringing in a new diverse business type to Broomfield. I have followed the residents' concerns about parking in the neighborhood in particular since the concept review. As one resident referred to, not completely understanding the parking study. I did spend a lot of time looking at the parking study, and based on its anticipated uses of the property. And it seems to me like it should be adequate. I certainly would encourage the neighbors to work with the developer if for some unforeseen circumstances that does not end up being the case. But I was satisfied with the parking study as it was presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate the applicant bringing this project to Broomfield. I think that this is a vacant piece of land that's sat there unattended, and it's a great reinvestment in this area. It's a great use of this land. I appreciate the applicant continuing to work with council and work with staff, limiting the number of units from 37 down to 33, narrowing the proposed variety of uses and limiting the type of uses. I think that was something that was brought up in the concept review, as well as neighborhood meetings, as well as by comments tonight. So I appreciate that. It sounds like the parking study is adequate. And from what I saw, it makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate that one of the concerns that we heard was around the kind of warehouse uses, and that has been limited there. It's 37.5%. So I think a lot of the concerns that have been raised have been addressed. One of the things that I very much appreciate the developer doing is the curb appeal there at 10th and Depot Hill Road. That for me, starts to build that gateway image, and it provides that, we're going from something that is a neighborhood eyesore that many people comment on to something that is all of a sudden we're proud of, and we're proud of entering this area. So that is very much appreciated. The for sale product, this is something that our residents continue to ask about, our business community continues to ask about, is providing for sale products, and this development does that. So I very much appreciate that. And the last thing I'll say is thank you for continuing to work on the building heights. I think that alleviated a lot of concern within the surrounding residents. And I think that I look forward to supporting this project tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Jezierski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindsted,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin,
He did have to step away. He did text me to let me know he had a childcare thing. So I guess move on.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen.
All right, that passes unanimously.
Didn't vote, yes.
Oh, the pause threw me off. I apologize. Councilmember Hinkle.
Yes.
Thank you. Is that it? Well, that does pass unanimously. And now I need, next is Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of proposed resolution 2022-81-UR. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2022-81-UR by title?
15A, public hearing, resolution number 2022-81-UR, approving the Depot Hill Lot 1 Urban Renewal Site Plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion by an authority member? Authority member Ward? Did you say?
I'm just checking to say it was unmuted. Yes, I move that resolution number 2022-81-UR be approved.
Thank you. May I have a second? Board member Henkel?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll for the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority?
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindsted,
Yes.
Marsh Holshin, Schaaf,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Mitchell, Nielsen, Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen, Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Seeing there is no further business before Borough, the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is adjourned. Thank you all so much. Our next order of business on the agenda is the public hearing and council's consideration of two resolutions relating to the annual action plan for home and CDBG housing program funds. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And this evening, Deputy Director of Economic Vitality, Rachel King, and Housing Program Manager, Sharon Tessier, will walk us through both of these items. Ms. King.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I'm Rachel King, Deputy Director of Economic Vitality and Development. And tonight I'm providing a brief presentation on the allocation of our Community Development Block Grant Funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I don't see slides, but I'm wondering if everyone else does. There we go. Great. Thank you so much. If we could go to the next slide, please. Great. Broomfield receives a regular annual allocation of CDBG funds from HUD due to our status as an entitlement community. As a member of the Boulder Broomfield Consortium, we do receive a portion of home investment partnership funds as well. The annual process to allocate home funds goes through Boulder, however, as they are the lead jurisdiction of that consortium. So typically communities can use CDBG funds for housing, economic development, and neighborhood development activities. The majority of funds must be used to support low and moderate income families, and we define that as being 80% or below of the area median income as defined by HUD. Broomfield's portion of the home funds have historically been and will continue to be used to support a tenant-based rental assistance program administered currently by Broomfield Human Services. And each year, Broomfield is required to submit an annual action plan to HUD that outlines our CDBG project allocations. We are also required to undergo a public participation process for the action plan, which includes a public hearing, this public hearing, and a 30-day public comment period. So our draft action plan was available for public comment beginning June 1st. And that comment period will remain open until June 30th. The draft is available through the links in the memo and on the Housing Division website, and requests for translation and accessibility accommodations may be submitted to our office as well. Next slide, please. So our proposed 2022 allocations for CDBG funds are listed here. You'll see that primarily we plan to support affordable housing development, which will create multifamily rental units and housing rehabilitation services, such as mobile home repair or urgent systems repairs for homeowners. All households served will be at or below that 80% area median income level. Next slide, please. Thank you. Additionally, tonight we are bringing forward some proposed changes to the allocation of our CDBG coronavirus or CV dollars from our 2020 action plan. It's important to note here that the proposed projects are not changing, but rather just the allocations within those projects. So therefore, these changes are related more to the technical guidance we received and that's been provided by HUD in the past few months, as opposed to any true policy, policy shifts in the use of the dollars. Next slide, please. So in summary, staff recommends funding the following priorities for its 2022 HUD action plan and 2020 HUD action plan. Housing rehabilitation services for Broomfield homeowners, preservation and development of affordable housing, legal services for eviction or other tenant and landlord disputes, homelessness prevention, including provision of vouchers for non-congregate shelter and additional continued COVID-19 support, such as business support grants. Next slide, please. So in closing, and we apologize for that technical issue there with the edit, wasn't meant to show up that way, but we request council recommend for approval resolutions 2022-77 and 2022-82 related to the submittal of the 2020 and 2022 action plans to HUD. So with the next slide, I believe that concludes staff presentation. And we will accept any questions.
There, I'm back. Well, thank you. We'll now proceed with public comments. Please press *3, state your first and last name for the record, but there's nobody there. So we'll move on to questions from City Council. Members should limit their questions during this portion, although this is a little bit different. So any questions from City Council? It just feels a little off. Sorry. Oh, I see Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I just had a couple questions. The legal services allocation that where that's used for rental eviction challenges, I was just interested in knowing, generally speaking, are those challenges picking up, unfortunately, with the post-pandemic situation where a lot of landlords kind of forestalled pushing forward with evictions during the pandemic? Will we see an uptick in the amount of funding needed for?
I think the tail end of your question dropped off for me, but I believe I heard the majority of it. So yes, you're absolutely correct. We did see an uptick in tenant and landlord issues and eviction issues throughout the pandemic. We continue to see those currently now, not only in Broomfield, but in the Denver metro region. So our partner who provides these services, Colorado Legal Services, they are in constant talks with us and with other community members on how to change and adapt the services they're providing. Just recently as well, we were speaking with them about other ways to provide outreach to Broomfield residents in particular to make sure that we're understanding the needs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this presentation, Ms. King. Really appreciate this. I would like to just sort of flesh this out just a little bit more as far as the hotel vouchers. I'm curious how quickly we burn through our hotel vouchers as it stands in COVID versus, post-COVID. I guess we're not really post-COVID, right? But I'm curious if that could be, used in a different manner, or where did we get this, hotel voucher dollar amount, and what are the thoughts behind it?
Sure, I can provide an initial response, and then I might tap my colleague, Sharon Tessier, on the shoulder as she has some additional experience with this, joining us from her previous place of employment. So we are obviously non-congregate shelter is pricey. So the vouchers are, I guess, to use your language, we are burning through those dollars fairly quickly. And that was part of the thought behind the reallocation of dollars for the Cdbg CV funds, because we were actually seeing that more support was needed through those activities rather than traditional rental assistance, because the volume and the dollar amount essentially associated with those vouchers. So I'll pause and see if Sharon has any additional comments to add as far as the need.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so what we've seen is that the hotel voucher program has allowed us to actually house a few of those people experiencing homelessness. And it was an incredible process to witness, because without those funds, we wouldn't have been able to house them. And so there were at least 6 different families that were, because of this voucher program, it extends. So it's not just an emergency hotel voucher. It is a voucher that extends beyond like a 3-month period. So we were able to stabilize quite a few single parents, as well as other individuals who were then placed in permanent housing. They just needed that extra space to allow for them to catch up due to either being, and as we know, like, there are multiple reasons, and COVID is just one of those things that happen to occur, along with a lot of domestic violence too. So we saw some people fleeing domestic violence and during COVID, and we were able to rehouse those as well. So I hope that answers your question. I appreciate the question.
Yeah, thanks. I'm always, up for really rethinking a lot of our funds when it comes to even moving towards transitional housing. But I'm glad to see it isn't just a short-term fix. It's very important to get people the help that they need and get their wraparound services and to really help them launch. We're seeing this with our refugee families. It's taking more than 6 months. And that's somebody who's lost everything, right? So, eventually I think, and this is the part of that greater conversation with Adams, I think when we talk about domestic violence and, possible housing for that, that's sort of a bigger question I have for another day. And then what are we looking at when it comes to rental assistance? Are we going to see that need go even higher? Because I think the idea that we want to prevent people from becoming homeless. And so I just have concerns that the hotel voucher money is higher, but the cost maybe for the hotels might be higher versus the rental assistance and keeping people housed. So where's that balance, or can anyone speak to that portion of it?
Certainly. Thank you for that question. So with CDBG regulations, the eligible activity of rental assistance is a little tricky. Traditionally, CDBG is not as straightforward of a housing assistance grant in general as some of the other HUD grants. So they provide some pretty stringent standards when it comes to rental assistance. So because of those limitations with the grant itself, and because of the overarching need for the additional voucher support, through our partners with, as Sharon mentioned, kind of what we're hearing with Fish and the Refuge, and of course our partners in the City Human Services, that need is and the ability to spend the dollars on that side is it's a faster way to get the funds out into the community, I would say, rather than the rental assistance dollars. It doesn't mean that the need for rental assistance isn't there, but we do have some other mechanisms to support rental assistance, such as the home funds that we receive from the Boulder Broomfield Consortium, which are used for tenant-based rental assistance. So we do have some, even though those funds aren't spoken to in our action plan because they technically belong to Boulder, or in Boulder's action plan, we still have those available to us, and we utilize them to kind of balance out the need on that side of the table, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I wasn't really sure as far as the restrictions on rental assistance. Is it because it's only for 1 month? Or I know that we have one specific person really working with our residents and also working on budgeting with them too. So can you guys speak to what those limitations are exactly? Is that something that you guys are able to speak to?
Sure. They are limited to 3 months, so it's a little bit longer than one. There are specific costs that we are able to support, but many others that we are not able to support. There does also need to be some arrangements with not only the resident, but the landlord. And there's kind of some, I would say, implementation challenges, not insurmountable, but yet challenges in administration of that program through those agreements with the landlord and the tenant, and to get that assistance in an eligible expense. So without kind of going into overly going into too much detail, that kind of hits the highlights as to what the challenges are, but I'm more than happy to provide some additional background on that and submit that if needed.
Yeah, because I think, and that was sort of a facetious question with 1 month, because I know a lot of them, they're behind already by 1 month by the time we get contacted. And so they have that sort of lag. So yeah, thank you.
City Manager Hoffman, you wanted to speak?
Councilmember Hinkle, I wanted to add that, so we're having a very robust, comprehensive conversation on all things housing outside of CBDG on August 9th. So a lot of those questions with regard to stats, funding, what's next, where the priorities are, will occur at that study session on the 9th.
All right, is that all, Councilmember Henkel?
Great, thank you. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
All right, any other council member questions? Awesome. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2022-77 by title?
11B, public hearing, resolution number 2022-77, approving and authorizing the submittal of the 2022 action plan for home and CDBG funds.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Henkel.
I move that resolution number 2022-77 and number 2022-82 be adopted.
I think Nancy said we could do it together, so thank you. Can I have a second for both? Councilmember Marshall-Olson?
Second.
Thank you. Say it again though. Second. Just kidding. Is there any discussion? All right then. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lim?
Yes.
Lindsted?
Yes.
Marsh-Olson?
Yes.
Schaaf?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Cohen? Hinkle?
Yes.
Jezierski?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you all so much. And our next item under council business this evening is a public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2182, adopting the Broomfield standards and specifications. I'll now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. And we have a pinch hitter with us tonight that we all know. Ms. Sarah Grant is going to be presenting this item in place of Katie Allen. Ms. Grant, we sure appreciate you at the last minute filling in.
Absolutely. Thank you, City Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. My name is Sarah Grant, Transportation Manager, presenting tonight on behalf of Katie Allen, City and County Engineer. Supporting this item tonight include Matthew Deaver, Engineering Manager, and Bryce Hammerton, Traffic Engineer. Next slide, please. Broomfield uses engineering standards and specifications for the design and construction of public infrastructure, including roadways, water, sanitary sewer, drainage, parks, trails, and recreational facilities. Proposed changes to the standards and specifications include clarifications for design engineers and contractors, as well as changes to means and methods and improvements aimed at reducing future maintenance costs. Notification of the proposed changes to the Broomfield standards and specs were sent to a database of recent permittees, engineers, developers, and contractors, and was published online for review and comment. Minor comments and suggestions were received from North Metro Fire personnel and were incorporated into the current draft. The last update was approved on October 27, 2020. At the time of the last adoption, staff committed to reevaluating and updating the roadway cross-sections for better bicycle and pedestrian safety. Tonight, I will be reviewing the proposed street sections in more detail. Please note that these street sections would apply for new roadways built in Broomfield. Retrofits of roadways will use best practices and balance the cost benefit of investments to improve our roadways for all users. Next slide. As a bit of background in our approach, we developed a working group comprised of public works, streets, parks, planning, engineering, transportation, capital improvements, sustainability, open space and trails, North Metro Fire, Broomfield Police, and staff from the City Manager's Office to update our street sections. The goals included meeting the latest pedestrian and bicycle design criteria, minimize maintenance costs, and maintain the existing right-of-way widths to the extent feasible. The proposed cross-sections were presented to the Broomfield Transportation Forum on August 13th, 2021, and the proposed roadway sections were well received at the time. Following the meeting, the cross-sections were drafted and posted for viewing on the Broomfield Voice for comment in the month of November 2021. Council raised a concern at the first reading of ordinance number 2182 regarding the on-street bike lanes proposed for the connector roadway with an average daily traffic volume of 2,000 to 6,000 vehicles per day. Based on those comments, staff is recommending to increase the side path width from 8 feet to 10 feet, which supports an off-street facility option for bicycling and accommodates more users. Additionally, the maximum speed limit was reduced from 35 to 30 miles per hour, and these proposed changes exceed FHWA guidelines that are more consistent with NACDO All Ages and Abilities guidelines. Next slide. I'll be walking through these street sections, but to provide a bit of context for the federal highways, this depicts the general guidance from the 2019 Federal Highway Administration Bikeway Selection Guide that demonstrates the preferred facility type for bicycling, generally based on the context of traffic volumes and speeds. The higher vehicular volumes and speeds, the more separation is preferred when possible. For example, roadways such as Sheridan 144th Ave sustains traffic volumes and speeds where an off-street facility is preferred to be more accessible to a wider range of users. Generally, if a roadway is over 6,000 vehicles per day or over 35 miles per hour, an off-street facility supports more types of riders. Roadways that are less than 25 miles per hour and under 2,000 or 3,000 cars a day are like most of our neighborhood streets where a facility may not be necessary and the roadway can be shared between vehicles and cyclists. In between that, between 2,000 and 6,000 vehicles per day and under 35 miles per hour, a bike lane is an acceptable treatment per the federal highways guidelines. And this includes roadways like Miramonte between Cole and Main Street and Spader Way. Next, I'll walk through the street section update. The following slides will depict the current street sections, and I'll walk through the proposed updates for consideration tonight. Starting with the local street section, well, for each one, I'm going to be going through the existing street section, then I'll go through what is proposed. Next slide, please. This is the, next slide. Yep, there you go. The local street section, this is the current section with a 54-foot right-of-way with rolled curbs and 4-foot sidewalks and a 4 feet for landscaping. Next slide. The changes proposed are guidance based on land use intensity and potential for more pedestrian activity. All of the volumes and speeds fit within the shared roadway street context for cycling. So most of these are back of curb changes. For landscaping to allow for flexibility to retain the 4 feet landscaped area, that can be a flexible option to maintain that. But based on feedback from Public Works, increasing the sidewalk width or the landscaping width to 6 feet will allow trees to thrive. So there's the option to increase up to 6 feet for landscaping. In lower density single family will increase to 5 feet to meet ADA standards. Medium density areas will increase to 6 feet. These include areas maybe a mix of higher density single family and multifamily. And then ultimately higher density family areas or TOD areas would increase to 8-foot sidewalks. Next slide. And this is just the cross section of what I've just described. This is the low density single family cross section. Again, up to a 6-foot sidewalk to support trees, but a 4-foot could be maintained and a 5-foot minimum sidewalk for ADA compliance. Next slide. Here is the medium density residential where we support a wider 6-foot sidewalk in multifamily areas. Also, as a result of this change in the multifamily areas, we would have a standard curb instead of a rolled curb. And this width is adjusted to accommodate the minimum widths needed to support on-street parking and emergency access. Think of areas like Arista. Next slide. This is a higher density residential area where sidewalk is increased to 8 feet. And the same street width changes as the medium width for on-street parking and emergency access. This would be applied in areas such as TODs, where we would see even higher intensity areas. Next slide. The next street section type is the connector street. This is our current existing street section showing a lower volume roadway, includes a tree lawn and 8-foot sidewalks and back of walk for utilities for setbacks. I'm sorry, next slide. And so in this condition, we've increased the tree lawn and provided 8-foot sidewalks in this street section. Next slide. Multifamily commercial connector. This is a bit higher volume situation. So this is the existing street section where we show bike lanes and parking. And we have an option in this condition between 5 to 8 feet. Next slide. What we're proposing to change in this street section is define that this roadway would be acceptable between 2,000 and 6,000 cars per day. Per FHW guidelines, an on-street bike lane is appropriate treatment, and buffers may be preferred in this condition. This section is the one that I had mentioned that we had changed based on council feedback to increase the width from 8 feet to 10 feet, which is circled in green. And this provides a more comfortable facility for users that still may not feel comfortable riding in the bike lane. Additionally, applicable speed was lowered from 35 miles per hour to 30, and that is reflected in the updated changes. This exceeds FHWA standards. The updates reflect use for a wider variety of users, including those that feel comfortable riding on a road with under 6,000 cars a day, and also accommodates perhaps recreational users or maybe even higher speed cyclists such as e-bike users, but also provides an adequate facility off-street for those that may not be comfortable riding in the roadway. Roadways that would fit this context in speeds and volumes would be roadways such as Westlake Drive, 10th Avenue, and Miramonte between Cole Street and Main Street. Next slide. Before I walk through the higher volume roadways, I wanted to review the working group's approach to separated facilities. The treatment selected was mainly maintenance driven. Barrier separated bike lanes, such as the one shown on the left, similar to retrofits seen in downtown Denver, pose a challenge for snow plowing, snow storage, and sweeping for debris. These types of facilities require new equipment and additional staff to maintain and keep safe year-round. Off-street shared use paths shown to the right are easier to maintain with our current equipment and are overall lower cost to maintain. They also have the potential to be delineated with higher volume areas, such as the one depicted in the photo. Next slide. And here's our commercial multifamily connector. The difference between this one and the one we were just reviewing is a higher context in street volume. So over 6,000 cars a day. The bike lanes are to be pulled off street in this condition, and a wide shared use facility of 14 feet is provided to accommodate all users and reduce conflicts between users. An example of this roadway is Miramonte, west of Cole to US 287, where we may see a condition like this. Next slide. And this is the minor arterial existing, again, a little bit higher volume area. And this shows the existing minor arterial with 8-foot sidewalks and a raised median and bike lanes. Next slide. The proposed change here, the only proposed change is a wider side path facility. We will maintain the curb line to curb line situation to allow for emergency services, as they require a minimum of 20 feet curb to curb between the median and the landscaped area. This allows for vehicles to pull off and to allow emergency vehicles such as fire engines and police to safely pass. A great example of this is Lowell Boulevard between Westlake Drive and 136th Avenue. Next slide. And this is showing an option is the same condition, but just a different treatment in how a bike lane might be treated with striping to include a buffer. Next slide. And as we are getting pretty close here to the end, this is the major arterial and 4-lane existing. This is showing our current 4 and 6 lanes, and this shows bike lanes in the street as well as 8-foot sidewalks off street. Next slide. The updates to the major arterial is to relocate the bike facility from the street to off-street back of curb as a 14-foot multi-use side path facility. For the last 2 slides, I will pass it on to Bryce Hammerton, our Broomfield traffic engineer, to discuss the approach to intersection treatments for the proposed street sections. Thank you.
Sarah. So at intersections in our spec, we wanted to treat them a little bit more open-ended than the street sections. And that is because each intersection is different. They have different types of roadway configurations, bicycle facilities, and such. So that's kind of what we wanted to do while keeping the goal of safety in mind for all modes of transportation. So in our spec, in doing that, we wanted to reference some good design manuals for people when they're trying to design intersections, as listed there. And then next slide. And then we also wanted to list some factors that we wanted to be considered. They're listed here, such as number of pedestrians, intersection offset, pedestrian crossing distance, and so forth. And we do have a note that what we have listed in the spec, it should not be an inclusive list. It should be, because each intersection is different. So we want our designers to think outside the box when they're designing intersections for bicyclists. And then not listed on this slide, we also, in our spec update, have provided some sample treatments. Some of those that we've listed are bike signals, flex posts, concrete curb extensions, painted curb extensions, corner cushions, and then signing and striping updates, things of that nature. So yeah, that's kind of how we went about our intersection approach. Thanks, Sarah.
Great, thanks. Last slide. And this concludes our presentation, and the charter authorizes the City and County of Broomfield to adopt standard codes by reference. The proposed ordinance, if approved, makes the necessary revisions to Chapter 14-04 to adopt the revised Broomfield Standards and Specs 2022 edition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Bryce. And Ms. Grant, you continue to earn that rock star status. I just am amazed by you, and I hope we can share the results from our other meeting with council, because you knocked it out of the park there too. So thank you. Next is public comments. I don't see anyone online, so questions from City Council are next, and members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. Any questions? No? Okay, moving on.
Mayor, one quick question.
Sure, Stan, MPT.
Thank you. Just a question, staff. I saw that you are reducing the speed limits on the connector streets, and it was my understanding that is an example is Westlake Drive. And is Westlake Drive currently 35 and you're looking to reduce it to 30? Is that how I read that? And if so, is that realistic? So I imagine most folks that go down these streets probably exceed 35 already.
Yeah, so not every existing street is going to fit into our new sections perfectly, because these sections, the intent is mainly for new roadways, and then to update existing roadways as we are able, because a lot of these existing roadways were built on old standards. They might not have speed limits set maybe where we would now. They might not have the same bike lane widths that we are proposing. So we're going to try to update any existing street where we can.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my thought, this is probably going the opposite way, but my thought was just that I feel like 30 is probably fairly slow and it's going to be easily exceeded by most residents. So that's my concern. I think 35 is pretty slow for those type of, or probably appropriate for those type of streets. And I think going below that is going to be difficult, and you're probably going to see a lot of people exceeding that. But that's just my gut on that. I don't have anything to base it on.
Okay.
So, take it for what it's worth. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Moving right along then. Will the clerk please, next is council's consideration of, I have to close the hearing. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2182 on second and final reading. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2182 by title?
11C, public hearing, ordinance number 2182, adopting as a primary code by reference the Broomfield standards and specifications. 2022, addition and amending certain sections of Chapter 14-04 of the Broomfield Municipal Code in accordance therewith. Second reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ward?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that ordinance number 2182 be adopted.
Thanks. And is there a second? Councilmember Lindstedt?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to really quickly thank staff for all their work on this. I know Sarah and Bryce and Katie and everybody spent a lot of time on this. We heard this a while back in the transportation forum, and it's definitely a step in the right direction. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out because there was a lot of effort went into this. So I'm excited to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to, along the same lines as Councilmember Lindstedt, say thank you to staff for taking into consideration some of, my previous and other council member comments. We do really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Marsh-Olson,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen, Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yeah.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim.
Yes.
I was waiting for that last one. Well, that passes unanimously. Thank you all. The city and county attorney's report is next. Ms. Rogers, do you have a report?
I do, Mayor. Thank you so much. Last year, council amended its rules to allow for ongoing electronic participation at council meetings, not only by individual council members, but also by the entirety of council. Ironically, those rules really helped us out with this emergency IT situation for tonight to permit council to meet virtually on a last minute. When we passed those changes to the rules, council had requested and staff agreed that we would bring it back just for a check-in and discussion. As a reminder, high level, those electronic rules allow council, like we are tonight, to call a virtual meeting in the case of an emergency. 2 years ago, that emergency was COVID. Tonight, it was a technical emergency. Those rules also allow for individual council members or the mayor to attend the meeting virtually if that person has a need to attend virtually. One of the things that council considered at the time was, should we require a reason? And council decided not to do that. And one of the reasons for this check-in was to see if it was abused. From my perspective, and I believe I can speak for the staff members who deal with getting council meetings going, it's been working well. I think the virtual meeting attendance when council members have had to use it has worked well. Staff has been able to provide the resources so you can stay engaged and our public can also stay engaged. So I wanted to tee it up and see if anybody had any points they would like to discuss about the virtual rules, if there's any changes you would like to see to the virtual rules, or if you'd like to just keep them in and continue as we've been doing this for the last year.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Does anyone have any comments on the remote meetings? Updates? Councilmember Schaaf?
Thanks, Mayor. So I would agree with our attorney's assessment that the rules have been very good, that we have adhered to them, as well as they have not been abused. And I would say, let's stick with these. Let's review them in a year's time. Hopefully the world will be in a very different place, and hopefully we will continue to have technical issues. But I think that, remote participation, not only by council members, but also by the public, has been a huge asset for our community. And I continue to get comments that is very much appreciated. So thank you to our staff behind the scenes that doesn't even have a square on this Zoom Zoom window right now. Thank you to all of your work.
I couldn't agree more. Anyone else? Any feedback? Keep it as is. It's working. Awesome. All right. Well, Councilmember Ward, your hand's up.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to agree with what Councilmember Schaaf just said. I do think it's been working relatively well in the 1 or 2 times I've had to use it. It's been very helpful. And I do really want to emphasize the importance of having that alternative option for our residents to participate. I know some localities across the state and the country still don't allow that kind of hybrid option. And I think it really sets Broomfield apart from citizen engagement.
And I'm still very impressed by the fact that you guys were able to accommodate the residents who showed up in the lobby with like a setup to give remote testimony. So kudos. That's being nimble and being able to pivot, and you just continue to make Broomfield shine. So thank you. Well, it looks like we got our answers, Ms. Rogers. Leave it as is. It's not broken.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. The city and county manager's report is next. Ms. Hoffman, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mayor. And this is not in relation to Councilmember Marsh Holshan's Section 18A that we'll get to in just a moment. But at the last meeting, council had asked for staff to come back. I wanted to give some high-level anecdotal information regarding the library. Prior to the study session that is scheduled on August 30th, where the folks that did the market research and the layout and the timing and cadence of any of the library expansions, they'll be joining us on the 30th. Catherine Lineup is on the line tonight in case you all had any additional questions. But from the Mamie Dowd expansion and remodel, so again, just to clarify, the remodel was not for just the footprint of the existing Mamie Dowd. The remodel included an expansion portion that would have changed how the existing footprint is laid out and the programs along with the expansion. So the assumption is the expansion would be 26,000 square feet. The remodel would take place on the existing 34,000 square feet. We're estimating the total, and these are in 2026 numbers. These are not in 2019 numbers. We added in the escalation costs, and these are super rough numbers. That it would be right around 53.6 million would be for the Mamie Dowd portion. Council also asked about the scheduling. Total schedule would be about 42 months. I know that sounds like an extremely long time, but the 42 months includes the design, the public process, the bid and award, and then construction from beginning to end. So again, that's pretty typical for this size. And what complicates it just a little bit is we want to be able to keep the library open while this work is being done. So certainly not as complicated as keeping the senior center open when we did the BCC, but similar to that. So kind of between the reallocating of the programming and the mobility of the existing staff to continue to program while this went out. So again, we'll reiterate all of this on the 30th, but council had asked for a very high level. So again, 53.6 million would be the cost. That has the escalation dollar amounts in there. I'm sure that council read, I did send the mayor yesterday that Longmont has decided to put their water treatment facility expansion on hold, given their costs came in at $27 million more than they were estimating. So again, it's hard to project what those costs are, especially in this day and age. And then a 42-month total time. The North Branch assumptions, we're estimating 30,000 square feet. We'd have to find a place for it. So land may be a part of it, land may not be a part of it, depending upon the location and access to the infrastructure. The cost for that, we're estimating, again, with the escalation factor, is about 30 million. And that one is about 35 months. Again, design, public process, bid award, and construction. So when we finish, so we'll have the full conversation about the library on the 30th. And then we are having the bond debt capacity conversation, so that, again, council has the full breadth and depth of what we're obligated for, what the potential future looks like for from a prioritization perspective, and then what that will cost us, short-term and long-term, from the bond repayment portion. So we'll save the financial piece until the 30th, but that high level overview. I know that some of the conversation led to having a ballot initiative. We do not have time to do that this year. Ballot language has to be submitted by July 12th. There's just not enough time in order to do the deeper dive subsequent to the bond conversations and the debt capacity conversations in order to make a decision whether it's sales tax or a mill levy increase, and the specificity that the residents would have to know before it going to ballot. So additional conversations to come, some relatively quickly, i.e. library on the 30th, and then the bond debt conversation, and then the overall state of finances in the next 2 months. Mayor, that concludes.
Thank you so much for that update. It's been burning in my mind too. So I appreciate getting the kind of just a snapshot of what we're looking at in terms of cost and timeline. So thank you.
You bet.
There is no legislative update this evening, and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority completed their business earlier in the agenda. Additionally, there's no legislative update or any business before the Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors, and no special reports. Did y'all notice I said legislative update twice? Because that's what it's on there. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority was adjourned earlier. The next item of business this evening are Councilmember Marsh Holshin's request for future action. The first item is a request for council to direct staff to research offering health and dental insurance to city council members at the rate offered to full-time employees. Before I ask Councilmember Marsh Holshin to provide a brief summary of the request, I want to remind council that this is not a discussion on the topic. Instead, it's an opportunity for us to provide staff direction on whether or not council wants to dedicate staff time and resources to this request. So I'll turn it over to you, Councilmember Marsh Holshin.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just something that has been talked about amongst a lot of people since we are part-time, and but one of the things that we can't do is obviously salary is limited to get good people to run for office. And so one of the thoughts was to allow us to have health insurance at the employee rate. I brought it forward. I was talking with the mayor about it. I brought it forward because I have good insurance through my employer. I probably wouldn't use it, but it'd be something I think that we should offer for other council members. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for your brevity. So let's keep that going. Are there any opposition to moving this forward? I know it's been something we've talked about since I've been on council, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. And I would like it to go forward so we can finally get this matter addressed. So is everybody okay with us advancing this for more research? And head nod, thumbs up. All right.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick clarifying question on the scope. And Councilmember Marsh-Holston, I'm sorry if I missed when you said this. Would you like staff to look into options where the council members pay some, a portion, or none, or of the premium, or just a bunch of different options when it comes to benefit packages?
Well, I know when we got the benefit package at the beginning that we have the option, but it's super expensive the way it is right now because we're part-time. So my thought was that whatever rate that the full-time employees get.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the definition of part-time, I looked it up, is anything under 40 hours. And we all know that's pretty squishy. All right, then. So we got that one processed, and now we'll, let me see if there's any public comments on this. I forgot all about that part. No. Okay. Then the final agenda item is Councilmember Marsh-Holston's second request for future action regarding a library expansion bond and/or library district on the November ballot, which we already know can't happen by November. So Councilmember Marsh-Holston.
Thank you, Mayor. What Manager Hoffman said a minute ago pretty much answers the questions on this one. I did have one question for Manager Hoffman. You mentioned that part of the timeline on the current library is keeping services going. Could that be adjusted if the North Branch was built first?
That's a great question. So let me make sure that I'm understanding, Councilmember Marsh-Holston. So if we went with the North Branch first, left the footprint of the existing, you mean reprioritizing the order with which the construction would take place?
You just said that the part of the timeline was 42 months on the current remodel, partly because we have to adjust current programming. I'm just thinking if we have the North Branch in place first, could we reduce that 42 months slightly or whatever, based on moving programming to the other branch, I guess?
Yes, and again, that 42 months is squishy, right? So it's a seven additional months in order to keep the library open. Director lineup will, I'm shooting from the hip here when I say this, but there's all, I don't know if we'd have to necessarily do the North Library first in order to reduce reliance on the Mamie Dowd, which would then speed it up. I think regardless whether it's 3 or 5 months or 7 months, some existing program is going to have to continue at the Mamie Dowd while we do that expansion. We don't have the capability, if we have another library up north, to completely shut down the Mamie Dowd for that period of time.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. So, Mayor, I mean, obviously, Mayor, I put this in to try and, in the conversation with the Town Square development. So, but obviously, since it can't go forward this year, then I'm happy with the existing timeline of conversations that we're going to be having.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for prioritizing this. It is an important asset to our community. So we have it on the calendar, and we'll do a deeper dive in August. So thank you all for also agreeing to that extra study session to do it. I appreciate that. I didn't see any public comments on this one either, but I'll double check. Nope. All right, well, that concludes the items on this evening's agenda. Is there any other business to come before council? Well, seeing none, this council meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Hope to see you in person soon. Bye, everyone.
Good evening.
The Access Live event is in music hold. Everyone else has left the